All right, all you cool cats and kittens. So we are switching gears up a little bit here. We're going to be interviewing a very ambitious dental student that we encountered during our webinar for our group coaching programs. Brandon Stafford. This guy was lining up the chat the whole time and just totally bragging on himself and how much he has taken in the SP philosophy in his life, and I'm sure a lot of other things that he'll get into, and really just put it into action. And I think he's just absolutely killing it. And so what I wanted to do is just kind of do an expose on him, and maybe he would serve as some inspiration for other people and kind of pay it forward and get some people, get that sort of on fire kind of philosophy that we all have here at Share Practices. So also, before we get into that, I want to introduce for the second time on the show, Peyton Keller. He's a name many of you will be familiar with. I don't know if it's been said or when it's really planning on being announced, but he is being brought on as a brand new Share Practices intern. He's going to be helping me out here with the pursuit of ownership and a lot of the ways that we're interfacing with our student audience. So I'm really happy to have him on. So Peyton, how's it going?
It's going great. I'm glad to be here.
All right. And Brandon, how are you?
I'm excellent. I'm really excited to be on. I've listened to every single episode of Shared Practices multiple times. So it's pretty crazy that, now I get to speak.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely amazing. Well, you've definitely earned your spot here. I would say that I did not quite do all of that before the first time I got on the show. I just, worked for George and Richard and, did all the dirty jobs they didn't feel like doing anymore for a few years. That's how I got on here. But Peyton did quite a bit of work to get on here as well. So I think this is, a good three people that have contributed a whole lot to Share Practices. And it's pretty awesome to be able to have that platform for you guys. Yeah, absolutely. Oh, and fun fact. So right before we started recording, we realized that Peyton and Brandon are like a social distance away from each other. They're both in Omaha right now. So they're actually going to have a lunch date right after this and have coffee and catch up, which I think is pretty funny. But anyway, so Brandon, tell us a little bit about who you are and where you're coming from and some more about your ownership journey.
Sure. So I am just starting D3 year at Creighton University in Omaha, Nebraska.
Okay.
I came from Minnesota, went to undergrad in Wisconsin. Now I'm here in Omaha. I have no dental relationships in my family. I have no connections whatsoever. So, at an early age, I kind of took it upon myself that I have to go out there and, grind, hustle, and do the work myself.
Yeah.
And that's kind of led me to where I am now. And I think that everything I'm doing is just small actions each day that are leading to the mountains of success that I want to have when I, finally get out of here.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I like that point about, sort of making your whole day like a microcosm of what you're hoping to do. Like you kind of set out and you're kind of on a mission and you break things up and it's all supposed to be concordant with what you want to do with your life. Does that resonate with you at all, Peyton?
Yeah, absolutely. It does. I guess I'd just be curious. So did you have that mindset going into dental school, or once you got into school, what kind of caused you to move in that direction?
Flip the switch? Yeah, I'm curious.
Sure. So honestly, what flipped the switch for me was my process of getting into dental school, because I was not a traditional dental school applicant. I went straight from high school to undergrad to dental school, no gaps in between, but I've always been entrepreneurial minded, entrepreneurial spirited. And I didn't have the highest GPA going into dental school. So what happened was I applied to 13 schools. I had 12 rejections, like right off the bat, basically no wait list, no asked to be interviewed, nothing. I had one wait list opportunity, and that was Creighton. And it was getting down to the wire. It was about February, March time. And I realized, man, I have this biology with business degree, that's not really going to get me far. So I need to make something happen. So basically what I did is I emailed the admissions team over at Creighton. I drove down, in one day, woke up at 3 a.m. and drove down there and basically, asked them, what can I do to get in? And my GPA was right on the cusp. And he said,
pun intended.
Yeah.
Had to go ahead, sorry.
He said, you're right on the edge of where we like to accept. So, I told him, I basically said, I had no idea where my grades were. I was in the middle of senior year's spring semester. And I basically said, I will get a 4.0 and I will send you my grades and maybe we'll see what happens. And basically I went back, not knowing I didn't even remember what my grades were at the time. And I busted my butt for the next 2 months, got that 4.0 GPA for the semester, sent in my grades. Every time I got a grade, I sent it in. And, you know, in early summer, I had been accepted and it was crazy. So I realized that, you know, I needed to just take action. That was the biggest thing, was taking action. And that kind of flipped the switch for me in life. And I realized, you know, this is kind of a miracle of how I got in. So I need to take advantage of this opportunity.
I disagree entirely. I don't think that's a miracle at all. I think you showed an incredible amount of work ethic and drive for that. I mean, you entertain like a totally unconventional way of getting in. You know, I mean, you just bothered the hell out of them, and they said, okay, well, if we don't take him in now, he's going to be shooting us every grade he makes for the next year, and he's going to get in eventually. Let's go ahead and take him in. That's really awesome, though. I commend you for that. I'd never heard of anyone doing that before. That's very cool.
I also love how he like said that he would get the 4.0 without even knowing if he could. Like he said it and then figured it out later. I think that's awesome.
You just put it into being. Yeah. That's very cool.
Yeah. And honestly, the other thing that kind of helped flip the switch was, you know, I always listen to, you know, motivational speakers, Jim Rohn and Tony Robbins, those kind of guys, just the personal development type of stuff. But shared practices was kind of what, you know, I had the mindset behind what I wanted to do, but I needed the how. How was I going to get there? And shared practices really gave me the how, because, you know, you guys went into everything, you know, the numbers, the profit and loss, you know, what to look for when acquiring a practice, you know, that sort of thing. And it's been instrumental in the foundation of my knowledge.
So when did you start listening to shared practices? When did you find us?
Beginning of freshman year, a couple of other upperclassmen just said, hey, you know, listen to shared practices, start from the first episode. And I said, sure. And it was like, you know, back when you guys started off, so it was pretty old, but I was like, hey, I'm going to do it. And I went sequentially.
Right. Just ran with it. That's awesome. Yeah. So tell me how you have pursued ownership while you've been in school. And by the way, I haven't said this yet, but what really piqued my interest in you was that in the webinar, you mentioned that you had at that time, which is now an outdated number, visited 21 offices as a result of your mailer. I think you'd sent out about like 250 or something like that. And you had gotten a bunch of responses back, and you just been visiting them like crazy. Like, you're just starting your D3 year. And at that time, you had already visited 21. By now, it's at least 23, I know.
Yep. Yeah. So basically, I sent mailers out at the end of D1 year. I did the whole Charles Loretto approach. So I you know, the big yellow envelope, that sort of thing. And I sent about 100 that round. And that was targeted to mainly just solo doc offices. And then I kind of got inspired when I started hearing more of George's story and, you know, the episodes where you went to his office and checked it out. You know, I was a little inspired. So I was like, I'm going to send to group offices now. So I sent about another 100 to group offices. And so I sent about 200 total. And then that was, you know, within the last year. And then about 6 months after the first round, I sent another round to the exact same offices. But instead I did a postcard. I did the whole Vistaprint postcard thing.
Good.
And basically I got calls, responses. And the hardest part about all of this was I'm in Omaha, but these are in Wisconsin. So anytime I came home, I had to drive home, you know, 8 hours and then I'd spend 3-4 days just going to offices. I mean, I had to plan it out so I wasn't late to anything. And I'm not familiar with any of this area. And that's just kind of how it happened.
Wow. What a monster. So you did you say 2 rounds total? Yep. Or so you said the first time you did sort of the Charles Loretto NDP type thing, and then you did like the postcard. Did you notice any difference in the response rates or what you were getting back from people?
You know, that's interesting because that's kind of why I did that approach, to compare the two, and I didn't see much of a difference. Because I think it would have been different if I put my postcard in an envelope. So they were, you know, they were forced to open it. It wasn't just an open postcard going to that office. You know what I mean?
Of course. Yeah.
So I think it was similar. But what I did is to find these opportunities, to find these offices to send to, I didn't just, you know, go on the Wisconsin Dental Association's website, get a list of dentists and mass send those out. I went through and I basically, I didn't know the area. So the backstory behind Wisconsin. So my girlfriend is from Wisconsin and she wants to move back to the area. Her family's, you know, suburbs in Milwaukee area. So that's kind of the area that we've been looking, and I haven't been familiar with that area. So what I did is I was on Google for hours, and I went through basically the whole eastern half of Wisconsin. I searched each county, the population in each county, made a spreadsheet, and then within each county, I listed the cities within each county, and then the population of each city, and then I did the median income, and then I could just generally counted the amount of dentists in that city, and I got like a vague dentist to population ratio. And then from there, I just Google search, dentist in Waukesha, Wisconsin, for example. And that's kind of how I found these offices.
Wow. Yeah. So you kind of like reverse engineered like a demographics report in a way, or at least suited it to what your interests were.
Right.
That probably took some time. I have a feeling that it did.
It did.
Yeah. Yeah. That's really interesting. I mean, I personally, Peyton, I don't know where you're at with your mailer.
I am nowhere with my mailer.
Okay. So, well, yeah, we'll be working on that.
Yeah.
So with me, I did the whole directory thing. And I did something sort of similar. Like I had my sort of search area. And I went through sort of the graduation dates, mostly like 50 to 55 and up, but like there were some counties where I pretty much just like sent it to everybody. And I was doing that for a while, and I was kind of sending them out in waves. Like as I was getting the envelopes done, I would just send them out for the day. And I've kind of noticed that, I had a little bit better responses with the ones that were targeted. And by targeted, I mean, I did go through and actually look those places up on Google, kind of get a little bit more of a feel of like what the team was like, how many doctors were there, how many hygienists do they have, because I was looking for group practices as well. So it's kind of like a hybrid of, that sort of like, shotgun blast, let me shoot this to everyone in this directory, and sort of your cold hard Google search approach, which I mean has worked phenomenally for you. So tell me a little bit about, how did the responses come in? What was the sort of time lag? Did it all kind of come at one time? Did they sort of peter in over a few months? What was that like?
A lot of the responses were about 2 weeks after I sent a lot of the cards out. I kind of did what you did. I didn't send all, 100, 200 at once. I kind of did, I got like 80 done at one time, sent 80 out, and then another like 30. Yep. But it was all within a couple of days, and they were all within about 2-3 weeks. And almost all the responses were phone calls, even though I gave my email, I gave my phone number. A lot of them were phone calls. So how that kind of came about was I would get a phone call, and most of the time we'd talk on the phone for about an hour.
Wow.
It was a lot of it was, older dentists who I think, really had no one to talk to about this stuff, didn't have any kids in dentistry or anything like that. So they were really excited to just, talk about their experiences with dentistry and, talk about their practice, that sort of thing. And that's been my whole mantra behind this whole thing, is creating relationships with these dentists to create a win-win scenario when, transition has come, and it's definitely paid off, because I'm almost friends with a lot of these office owners now. And,
wow.
I can kind of pick and choose what, office I want. So when people say that they can't find opportunities, I promise you there are so many opportunities out there, and it's only getting, better and better for us, unfortunately with this whole COVID situation. But I've gotten some responses that I've sent, 6 months ago that have finally responded.
And people are coming back.
Yeah.
They're like, yeah, let me revisit that. So they put you on the refrigerator or somewhere.
Right.
Yeah. To refer back to. Very cool. Yeah. Peyton, you got anything?
Yeah. They're probably just thinking, as good as all this extra PPE sounds, it just doesn't,
Yeah. I love the spacesuit and everything, but I really got to start thinking about my future. Yeah. No kidding. Yeah. So, Brandon, talk to me a little bit about, I mean, obviously, and I think we've definitely shown that so far in this episode, but obviously you're a really driven guy, and, the switch got flipped for you and you understood that you need to take action in your life. But I want to, like, I feel like there's got to be more to it, right? I mean, there's got to be something as to like, what is really pushing you to be doing this every single day? What made you dive into share practices and listen to every single episode? Like, what's really your drive? What gets you up out of bed in the morning? Is that a loaded question? It might be loaded.
It is.
Good. Yeah, I meant to.
That's interesting. I didn't really have like a moment where I just switched. It was just like, it's just been like, honestly, I think a lot of it is reading the books, listening to these motivational speakers, I mean, the Grant Cardones, like I said, Jim Rohn, those kind of guys have just like sparked this fire in me that like, I really want to go out there and, be successful. And, you had said that, it took a lot of time to do a lot of this mailer stuff, a lot of the, sort of the front loading the process. But to me, it really wasn't. I enjoyed doing it. I enjoyed going to see these offices. I was getting up super early and getting home super late, driving to all these places. Sometimes I would drive 8 hours to Wisconsin. Then I would have to then wake up the next day and drive 6-7 hours to, coordinate all these offices together. Cause some were 3-4 hours north, some were, back 2 hours south. It was just crazy. But, I just loved doing it. And, I've always kind of been that way. I get up at 4:15 every day. I work out. I've been able to do that during dental school, and I've just realized that massive action is what is going to get you results. It's not really that a lot of these successful people they are exceptional people, but at the same time they really just took action, and that's kind of what I've been trying to embody.
Yeah, and I think you have. I mean, you just named so many things that I hear. I shouldn't say classmates, but colleagues, all across, like whenever I'm talking to them about, life in dental school, there's always these compromises that happen. Sometimes you compromise your sleep, you compromise your health, you compromise your time in the gym, you compromise your ability, like your perceived ability to go out and find jobs or practices you want because, you got so much going on in dental school and all that stuff. But it seems like, I mean, it's my philosophy, at least, that if you don't have time, you make time. And you do it however you want to. I mean, if you're really prioritizing that, if you're willing to shift things around, if you're really willing to embody your goals and your vision and what it is you're trying to do, I mean, you just do it. Like, it's not really, I mean, the things you're saying sound kind of crazy. Like, oh yeah, I drive 8 hours to Wisconsin, then I come back and I do this and that. But I mean, you're still sitting here and you're glowing and you're in good shape and you're talking to me and you're still like very excited about this whole journey, right? So it's like none of that really took away from your life at all. It's just something you wanted enough, and you understood that taking action was going to get you there. And I that's what I really admire about you.
Yeah. It's dental school is only 50% of the equation for me. Since I want to get into ownership right out of school, that's half of it. The other half is this stuff. The networking, the learning the tactical side of things. Reading books on tax law, figuring out what entities I should set up when it comes to, the practice, all sorts of things. And it's been exciting to me. A lot of people think, man, that's like boring. I would never read a book on investing. I would never read a book on taxes. I would never read, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, all that stuff. But, that stuff just lights me up.
Yeah. Like, I mean, I think passion is really the difference. Like, none of those things are objectively boring. It's just, whether or not you can fit it into the larger piece of what you're trying to do. I mean, if you're just reading a tax law book to read about tax law, that's pretty pedantic. Like, I would question your sanity, but you're fitting it into, the larger picture of what you're actually trying to do. And these are things that you want to know when you get into that place. And, I don't think that's to say that everyone that listens to Share Practices has to read tax law, but at least understand that, even when you're consuming that kind of information that can be a bit, droll and there's like kind of just rote memorization involved, like if it fits into your picture, it makes sense, and it makes it a lot easier for you to actually, get through it and be engaged in it.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I feel like with a lot of this stuff, if you just meet someone and say, hey, I'm reading about tax law, they're like, why? But if it's kind of like the more you learn, the more you want to learn, like, more deep into that subject.
Right.
So like maybe learning about what entity led you to tax law, and like, it sounds crazy to some people, but to you, it's just, another step in the process.
Right. Yeah. And the other thing is, I've been trying to take advantage of all the resources out there. So, they say, dentistry is not the same as it once was back in like the 80s. They said back then, you could hang up a shingle and you could go out there and you could just crush it. Well, my mentality is, I think that's kind of the scarcity mindset, but my mindset is focused on more of the abundance. I think this is the greatest time ever to open up a practice. I mean, look, Shared Practices has taught me so much. You guys offer the Ownership Accelerator. I mean, we can go on YouTube videos, so many other podcasts, and learn from other people's mistakes and all these books and everything. That, man, I'm coming out like, ready to go. I feel like I have all this knowledge that I can just like use right away, versus like, back then there wasn't all this information to source together.
Right. It's like readily at your disposal. I mean, at that time, if we're talking about the 80s, I mean, you had to just you just found mentors, and you just hope that those mentors actually knew what they were talking about. But, again, this was a time where, like, if you did one or two things right, you were a millionaire. Howard Friend says this all the time, right? So you may or may not have been getting actually like valuable advice for what you were hoping to do. But now, I mean, there's just so many voices out there that are doing so many different things. And, it's up to you to kind of conglomerate that and figure out what makes sense for your vision and what's going to, make your life better. But I absolutely agree with you. I mean, it's just so abundant, and it's really there for anyone that wants to reach out and grab it. And I just see a lot of people that have these goals, or rather intent, like they have this intent to do these things, but you can kind of tell, how serious they are about actually actuating that, because are they actually just reaching out and grabbing that low hanging fruit? Because there's tons of it. And if they're not, it kind of says something about whether or not they're really willing to actually take those steps to get where they're trying to go.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a matter of just getting things done. I feel like a lot of people will talk big talk, but their actions don't back it up. And I feel like that's somewhere where you really shine. It's just, you say you're going to do something and you do it. That's all there is to it.
Yeah, just being about it. So tell me a little bit more about some of these office visits that you've been doing. Like, what kind of walk me through, since you're, very well seasoned in doing this. Like, how do you go about like visiting an office, talking to a seller, introducing yourself to the team? Like, what's all that like? Kind of walk me through that.
So a lot of it, like I said, stems from that first phone call. So the phone call, we really get to know each other pretty well, and I think it's unintentional. It's just we start talking and we get into things, and it just starts rolling. Sometimes it'll be an hour and a half long, and I'm like, man, wow. It was just unexpected phone call. I got to be ready for it anytime. But basically, what I would do is, since I was in Omaha, I would have to basically send out a text or phone call to say like 5 or 6 that I was planning on visiting at that time, and say, hey, I'm going to be in Omaha or in Wisconsin in 2 weeks. Right. Will you be available on between this day and this day? And that's kind of what I would do. And I would have to plan it out. Okay. From this practice to this practice takes an hour and a half to drive from. So I got to meet them from 8 to 10, and then, give myself an hour and a half leeway, and then meet at noon to 2, that sort of thing. So that's kind of how I did it. I just said it, if you're interested in meeting up, grabbing a coffee, checking out the office, that sort of thing, I would love to. And I would go to the office. I'd say half the time the staff was there when it was during an actual work, clinical day, and the other half wasn't, just because it's hard to, it's great to see the practice in action, but it's hard to really talk to the doctor, when you're limited in 2 hours, 2-3 hours, they're practicing. You're basically just shadowing. So what I try to do is meet and talk with them for, 2 hours or so. And then I would go again to shadow and really see how the office works, so I could learn about the office first, and then, decide if I really want to pursue that. Because there are some offices, that I started talking to the doctors, and it came down to the numbers, and, there weren't offices that I would want to close on, especially right out of school. There were guys that were producing, 2 million plus, and those are offices that I wasn't looking to purchase. A $4 $2 million office, just it wasn't realistic for me. And I'm ambitious, but I'm not naive.
not silly. Yeah, absolutely.
Like, we're a GP, but we only do all on 4s.
Yeah. So just step in those shoes right out of school, no problem.
Yes. Yeah. So, and I would always make sure I showed up in a shirt and a tie, or maybe a suit or something, just to show that professional side of me. Because I took these very seriously. I wanted them to take me seriously, because it's not very often that a student wants to purchase out of school. And I want them to know, hey, I'm putting in a lot of work here. I'm serious. I'm willing to purchase, and I'm going to, I want to treat your patients well, and I'm going to take care of what you have here and carry on your legacy. So that's kind of what the approach that I had was, just be very professional about everything.
That's really good. It actually kind of runs a little bit counter to my typical strategy. And I like what you're doing, because you're showing up, as a businessman, wanting to talk about business and possibly, purchasing the practice. I'm more of a scrubs and donuts kind of guy. I show up in my nice scrubs. I've got my name embroidered on it. I've, found an internet place that'll do that for like $5. And I always show up with a baker's dozen donuts, of Dunkin' Donuts every day for the team. But I actually kind of like that you're meeting pretty much just the doctor and actually just having coffee and talking with them directly, as opposed to, going and just like shadowing a day in the office. Like for me, like I've actually just been going and like actually just spending the whole day. And I'm there like with the team and everything. However, my situation is a lot different than yours. Like I don't drive 8 hours to these offices. Like they're not that far. I can usually get back in time for school. If I really book it. So That's really interesting. I mean, I love that you have enough options to where you can actually visit multiple offices like within one of your visits to Wisconsin. Like that's pretty insane that you're like scheduling those. It's really impressive, seriously.
Well, thanks. The options have been great because now I'm at a point where I can, like you said, I have a choice and I can basically choose, do I want to do the solo office route, kind of the Derek Williams type acquisition, or do I want to do, the more group office type acquisition? And I have both options right now. And I think that's the best thing I have is freedom of choice, and I'm not limited. And the other thing is, just that trying to figure out that vision of what type of office I want to buy has been hard, but
walk me through your decision matrix there. I mean, how are you tossing those up, solo versus group?
Man, I struggle with that every day because I hear, I really like I mentioned the Derek Williams acquisition. I really like that, and a lot of the offices I found are those type of offices where it's producing or collecting anywhere from 400 to 600, maybe 4 ops, lower overhead. I think those are great value add type practices to purchase. But then again, in my greater vision, that's really what I'm trying to figure out. Is I hear George's story and I'm like, man, I can really have the clinical side of the practice really weight on my shoulders and my shoulders only, or do I want this group type setting where I can really relay things with multiple doctors? There's quote unquote the passive income side of that too. But do I want to manage a team and people, or do I want to do a lot of clinical dentistry?
Right. And it does seem though that, even if you do go with a group model, I mean, you could still be doing a whole lot of dentistry. Like that's kind of up to you.
Right.
But of course you are still having to manage a team, but I feel like you kind of preserve your choices whenever you go for a larger office. Like the ceiling is a little bit higher for you. If you go into one of those value added situations, I'm not against it at all. Like I think if that's what you want and that's the shoes you're willing to fill, like it can be absolutely great. Like it's a lot. I mean, it's predictable. It's a little more simple. It is doctor dependent. Right. But you kind of pigeonhole yourself into that. But if that's what you wanted to do, then great. I mean, financing is going to be a lot easier to do, especially out of school. There's a lot more of those opportunities around. That's for sure. I'm sure you've noticed that in the responses you've been getting back. I mean, it's probably more solos than it is one of those like larger, 8 op plus, practices. So you can kind of get your pick of the litter. But that's interesting. So I guess you're kind of trying to figure out, where you kind of sit as the clinician versus the CEO, right? Is that kind of what you're trying to?
Yeah, exactly. And, going back to the relationship side of things, the relationships have really helped me, determine, basically I've gotten verbal offers from multiple solo docs that they would basically carry the note, seller finance an opportunity. Great. So that also leaves me with options as well. And I think that kind of came from, back to the relationship thing. I sent out thank you cards to all the offices I visited, hand wrote thank you cards. And then I took it one step further and I wrote thinking of you cards during the COVID, when everything was shut down. I basically said, hey,
oh my God.
What a guy. You're schmoozing me, man. Jeez. Wow.
And that really went well. Brilliant. And I basically just said, I was a little cheesy. I just kind of said, out of all the doctors out there, I know you'll make it through this. I know, it's tough times right now, but you'll get through this and everything will be great. And I just want to let you know that I'm thinking of you and I hope everything's going well. And just simple things like that, simple touches, here and there has been monumental, because now I'll just get random texts from these owner doctors that'll like send a picture of like their dog saying like, enjoying my day at the lake with the dog, that sort of thing. And it's really cool to have that.
Yeah. Just getting like the occasional you up text at like 2 a.m. just from the seller.
That's like telling the owner doc, like, hey, I dare you to find a better person. Go. It's
exactly.
not going to happen.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. I mean, you're just being a good person. The whole thank you notes thing, I hadn't even really considered doing that for offices that I'd visited. I figured the donuts would probably enough, but that's kind of inspiring me to do that. But I did write them for my patients one time. I did that. Well, I gave them all a call over COVID and I write them like, Christmas cards and stuff like that. And really, I mean, it's like the same rules apply. Like when you're taking care of your patients, when you're taking care of people, you're showing that you're a person, you care, you're compassionate. I mean, those relationships are so invaluable, and it kind of puts you as a potential buyer over, anyone else that might step into that space and say, hey, I'm interested in owning your practice, right? It might, docs often have DSOs knocking on the door saying, hey, we'll pay you X amount of money for your practice. And, I think that especially as a student, when you're going out and you're trying to find these opportunities, they're extremely relationship sensitive. They want to know, they're looking for someone to take care of their baby, for the next however many years, so they absolutely want to know that you're a loving, caring person and you're coming in there with the right intentions. They don't want to just see that, stiff person that's coming in with a suit and tie, which by the way is still a great idea, but you're also adding that sort of personal touch. And I think that kind of gives you like the whole package. So yeah, congrats on that, man. Seriously.
Yeah. And another approach, for anyone listening who's thinking about doing the mailer thing and, looking to purchase an office, another really good route to go is start contacting, sellers, reps and distributors. And, basically I've been at a couple offices and there was like a densely rep, at the office. Yeah. I basically just said, hey, if you know anyone, selling an office or looking to sell or retire in the next 2 years, I'm looking. And basically my goal was, right. I'd reach out to realtors, I'd reach out to, I did talk to brokers, and I want every single person in that area to know that I'm looking for an office, because when that comes up, I want to be the first person they think of.
Right.
And, I'm not against brokers. And I did meet with a couple, and, obviously they didn't give me much of the time of day. And, I tried to, work my way in there a little bit, but
I hear you, buddy.
It didn't go well.
Yeah, I've been there. Yeah.
And it is possible. I don't think that, you can't find a broker while you're still in school. I totally think you could do it. I could have just pushed a little harder and got it, but I was just like, you know what? I'm going to do the mailers instead and take it upon myself. And this same approach that we're talking about can work with associateships too. If you're looking for an associateship out of school,
you're right.
I think that's a great way to go, because I did have some offices that said, hey, we would love to have you on as an associate right out of school, that sort of thing. So, there's so many options that come about this.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's a great note about the associateships. I think some people will come out and, maybe they're not entirely sure that they're going to be purchasing a practice, but, no matter what you're doing, if you're looking for a really nice job where you can get some really good experience and possibly a great income in a place that has a really good culture, you got to be marketing yourself for that too. It's just not as simple as just like making a resume and, sending it out to, a local, transition consultant or whatever company that kind of helps you find those sorts of opportunities. Like, market yourself. And I think no matter what you're trying to do after school, like, you should be willing to do that. To some degree, you have to do that for residencies. You have to do that for jobs. So, I absolutely agree with you. I think it's a really great strategy. So when you sent out your mailers, did you say that you were looking to completely buy out a practice, or that you were amenable to whatever they might have for you? What was your kind of message?
Yeah. So, my postcard is definitely not as fancy as yours.
Look,
I was pretty blown away by that. But
yeah, that made for a nice Facebook post. But you've had wonderful reception with yours, whatever it is that you did.
It did. And I was thinking, I was planning on actually posting this to the Facebook group after.
I invite you to do so. Yeah. Yeah.
And I kind of show you. This is kind of a brief of kind of what I did. It's definitely more simple.
Yeah.
But on the front it says dental student seeking mentorship and private practice opportunity. And the line underneath it is what got a lot of dentists. I got a lot of people that responded to this. I said, keeping private practice alive and well. And so many dentists just love that. And then really? I just said Creighton University, graduating May 2022. And on the back side, I made sure I had some handwritten stuff on it. So I have my typed out letter to the doctor, hand signed it. And then on the side, the Green Bay Packers are a big thing in Wisconsin. So I basically just put like a little personal note. If I noticed it from their website, if they were a Packer fan or whatever, I put like, go
well
Packers.
Done.
And that kind of had that personal touch to it, but it was still, I was able to send out a lot in a short amount of time. And that's kind of what I did. And it worked pretty well.
Yeah, no, I love the handwritten touch. Like I ordered my envelopes to where they would have like some lines there so I could like handwrite the addresses. But I really like the idea of actually being able to handwrite on the card itself. And especially like if you're personalizing it to like bios or something you're seeing on the website, like that really shows that you actually looked at their practice, at them, you got to know them a little bit, and you actually said something that referenced them, that's really special. And I think I would attribute some of those little tiny touches to like the sort of responses you've been getting, which have been phenomenal. So yeah, congrats on that for sure.
I'm still a little stuck on, so how many total offices did you send a mailer to?
So I have it right here. I sent out I have a total of 205 that I sent out to.
Okay.
But I've had multiple touches with that.
Okay. So, and you've had almost 25 office visits, correct?
Yeah. So I have 23 that I'm like actively pursuing. I probably got another 5 that I'd kind of, they were either asking for an associateship or it was a DSO that sent like a templated email to me that I got responses from, or ones that, like I said, were just producing way too much that I just wasn't going to entertain. So out of that, I'm about 23. And I think the key to my response rate part of it has been some of these offices are definitely in rural areas because I'm not afraid to go rural. My whole vision is live, kind of the opposite of what most people do. Live in the city, live in the suburb city area where, we want to be, but drive rural every day. And that's kind of what I want to do. But, kind of vetting these offices via Google right away, it kind of filtered out a lot of the ones that, just probably wouldn't have responded anyways. Granted, I didn't know based on their website if they, were going to respond or not. But a lot of these offices that I do have are more quality offices that either own their own building or, are in a strip center with good visibility. I didn't send any offices that were in a medical, building or anything with no visibility because I immediately filtered those out. I tried to look for offices that had growth potential. So I have multiple offices now that, maybe they own the whole building. The other half is rented out to someone else or something else, but the lease may be up soon and, we could expand operatories. Sorry, I'm going on a tangent there, but I think
no, that's great. That's perfect.
Yeah.
Vetting it through Google is kind of how it has been the contributor to my response rate.
Right. So how are you vetting some of those latter things through Google as far as like knowing when the lease might be up or, whether or not you could expand if they might own the building? And what were some of the things you were looking at to determine those sorts of things or make a good educated guess?
Right. So the lease thing, I definitely didn't know until I talked to the doctor. Right. I had no idea if they own the building or what, but a lot of the times I would just, when I was on Google and search the office, then I would do a street view of the office, and you could kind of tell, is this the only office or is this practice the only thing in this building, or are there other things in this building?
Okay.
And that's kind of how I did it. And I think Google's amazing because I could go on Street View and then I could like search the whole block around and see like where it is within the city. I could see the Google Earth from the top, from 40,000 feet above and really see where this is in the city. It's crazy what we can do now.
They didn't have that in the 80s.
No.
And it's weird because like I would go through my directory. So the directory that I got sent, if they owned a practice, it would say it's like a suite building or like building number or whatever. Or sometimes it was an address that may have sounded like a residential address. So I would go in and I'd Google it and I'd go into Street View and I'd just be like checking out these dentist houses, like that's really weird. I'd be looking at in their driveway. I'm like, oh, they got a nice pool in the backyard, a little room for a trampoline. That's nice, but it's not a practice, but it's like, why, it's just such a weird thing that we're able to do, but it's amazing. It's incredibly empowering. And it gave you so much ability to filter through all those practices and opportunities that you could have had, and find the ones that were, most likely going to have a higher response rate. So I think that's another thing that I would attribute the response rate that you've had to is not only did you have a really great mailer that had a great message that was personalized, but also the ability that you had to filter through things and make them more high quality opportunities, I think may have also fed into that a little bit. So I'm trying to decode just how you became so successful at this. It's fantastic. I'm trying to reverse engineer you here.
Over a 10% response rate. Like that's crazy.
That's good, man.
Yeah.
That's really good. And you said you've kind of been getting some since COVID too, but like most of them happened about 2 weeks after you sent them out. Yeah. Do you plan on doing another round, or are you pretty happy with the selection you got? Are you going to keep searching? Like, what's your idea about that? you're just going in D3 year. You got tons of time.
Yeah, I'm definitely sending another round. I think that's the key to marketing is, just multiple touches. Because even after the second round, I had a few that replied to me and said, "Hey, I have your first mailer on my desk. I just didn't get to it. And here it is now." And it kind of just piqued that interest a little bit again.
Yep. Kevin Reardon. I don't know if you heard his episode, but he did the exact same thing. He sent out a couple rounds and he actually changed the messaging just a little bit and like had like a kind of joke about the fact that it's like the second time they're seeing him. He's a funny guy. And that worked for him too. You just never know. Like it may have just slipped their mind and they had every intention of calling you back, and something happened. They just didn't get with you. So like, what's the worst that could happen? it's not like they're going to like the idea and then you send them a second card. They're like, you know what? Forget it. Like, that's not going to happen.
Right.
Yeah. So yeah, I like the second round. I really think that's a good idea. I think it's smart to, wait a few months, right? But just like keep it going. And this is another reason that I'm starting to like really encourage people to start doing these mailers earlier. Like people think it makes more sense. And I used to think this, to do it, kind of like halfway through your D3 year, going into D4 when you might be purchasing pretty soon-ish, you know what I mean? It gives you enough time to get those responses. But really, you want to start getting those touches, and I like that you use that word, earlier on, and then you're kind of getting your second or your third touch when you're in your third year or your fourth year. So people really should be starting this process D1, D2. Like, this is absolutely something that you should be working on right away if you really want to maximize the number of opportunities that you're going to be looking at coming out of school. So, I just, that's my takeaway from that. That's just brilliant.
Yeah. And the other thing too is, in addition to just getting opportunities from this, it teaches you, one, how to communicate with other dentists and other, people who you view on this pedestal. I'm still a student in school, but you're a dentist. It teaches you how to have like professional conversations with them and, be on the same page. And also a little bit of this is marketing. The whole touch point thing is a marketing term. And this teaches you, that this is stuff you can implement in your practice, and, the multiple touch point thing, and, the handwritten letters, and, making everything more personalized and that sort of thing. And that's kind of just the route I wanted to go, is keep it more personal, because I think, marketing nowadays gets it's just so commercialized, and so it's not personal anymore.
Yeah. It's a lot of boilerplate.
Right. Right. And if you can, take that approach that I kind of did, I think you'll have, massive success.
Absolutely. So do you have any, particular communication nuggets? I try not to use the word pearl too much. I think that gets a little overused in our industry. So do you have any communication nuggets for talking to dentists, just to kind of have them warm up to you and take you seriously?
I think the biggest thing is just really having, I guess I don't really have like you said, a pearl, but you really need to have confidence.
I said nuggets, by the way, for the record, Brennan. I thought I was very clear about that.
A tidbit.
A tidbit.
but yeah, you need to have confidence to be able to speak with them in a manner that, you could talk about those things. And I don't think I would have as much confidence if I didn't have the basis of education from, Shared Practices and other podcasts, when it comes to, just basic stuff, what is EBITDA, that sort of stuff, just having knowing those basic terms will make you feel confident that if the conversation goes down that route, you can talk about that stuff and not just be like a deer in the headlights kind of look. Right.
Yeah. I think that's definitely a probing thing. Like I'll notice sometimes when I'm talking to dentists, like they'll throw a term out at me just to kind of see, how, kind of testing your business acumen. And when you can respond to that, and you don't have to do it in like a pretentious sort of way, but like when you can respond to that, competently, and you understand the concept and you're able to actually have some insight into it, they take you a whole lot seriously and more seriously. And the same happens when you're talking to brokers. Same thing happens when you're talking to bankers. When they start hearing some of those hot button words and they see that you have a higher level of comprehension than just someone that's just interested in this, it goes a really long way, and they really start to talk to you more like equals. And it's not like something that they're just kind of feeling out and they're probably going to pass you off. Like, they start really taking you seriously, because I think that, when they start talking to you and you start talking about these things and you sound very confident, it's clear they're not just talking to some D3. Like, that's just where you happen to be at in this process. But, that has nothing to do with your readiness to purchase a practice. I mean, I think you seem to me to be so much more ready than new grads or someone 1 or 2 years out, or, which is oftentimes what, these people are really, the kind of people these people are talking to. So, I think that's a great tidbit, as Peyton would put it.
Of course.
Yeah, man, that's great. So we've gone a really long time without actually talking about your vision. So I know we talked about sort of your solo versus group idea. You said you like to live in the city where you want to live, and you'll commute to the rural, but, what kind of help paint us that picture a little more? Like, I know you got some more details.
Sure. Yeah. So my vision is definitely different than, I'd say, your average, a traditional dental student out there. So I have another passion outside of dentistry, and I really love real estate. So I help my dad manage properties. We invest in real estate, and I've just, on top of learning about dental practice stuff, I have probably 30 books sitting on my bookshelf right now that are just real estate books.
Look at you.
And that's just my thing is, my practice is going to be the engine that fuels, my real estate portfolio. So that way I build up a portfolio that gives me that income that replaces, could replace my dental income. And basically it gives me the option to practice or not. So I have a choice, and it's not that I want to be out of dentistry. I just want to have a choice every day, whether I go into the office or not. And, Justin Short talked about that in a lot of his podcasts. And he says, the feeling I had when I was going in every day, but I didn't need to, he's like, you can't beat that.
I hear you. Yeah, absolutely. Like it's very different when you're going to work because you choose to go to work versus you feel like you have to go to work.
Yeah. Right. And the other thing is it allows me to, I have a soft spot in my heart for veterans. It'll allow me to, do free dental days for veterans, provide free dental care if I want to, but also at the same time, I don't have to, scrape on beans and rice. I can have this real estate portfolio coming in that gives me that cash flow every month to practice the way I want. And, I view it as like, I can make a really high income. Dentists make generally really high income, but a lot of times there's a lag between the high income and building actual wealth, because you can make a lot of money, but you cannot be, you may not have a lot of wealth behind you. So that's the thing is I want to build that wealth on the back burner too. So, so honestly, I don't see myself practicing clinically for the rest of my life. Not that I don't like it. I have other things that I want to do too. I think that we should all strive for, multiple things in life and do other things, and what's really thrown a wrench in that in the last couple of weeks is I actually, went to the chiropractor a couple weeks ago, and I was having back pain, lifting weights and all that sort of thing. And I found out that my L5 disc my L5 vertebrae is shifted anteriorly, and it's causing the disc underneath it to degenerate. So I had this moment, and I was like, man, I know dentistry is, it is tough on your back, but it's not so much tough as bad on your lower back. But it just kind of made me think like, I need to have other sources of income coming in, or if COVID happens again or that sort of thing.
Yeah. I mean, we have mileage for sure. I mean, I deal with back pain myself. I get up, probably 30 minutes early every day to do yoga and like deep tissue and foam rolling and all kinds of stuff. And, I think I'll do just fine. But, even if it's not something chronic that adds up over time, maybe you're on a ski trip, and like, just something happens and you slip and you fall and you slip a disc or God forbid something worse. And now, you're not really in a situation where you can be a practicing dentist. Mm-hmm. And it really helps to have a pivot. Like if you have all that real estate or whatever else it is that you're building and things change, it's so much easier for you to pivot when you're not just so dependent on this lifestyle. I in some ways, I see that as kind of high risk. A lot of times people see being that sort of like solo doc in the doctor dependent situation, low overhead, low production, like it's all on me. Like I just produce, I take home a whole lot of money. Like it's low risk. It's not a huge financial investment, but at the same time, there is risk because if something happens, I mean, yeah, you got disability and you got this practice that you could sell, sure. But like you don't have all that wealth that you're talking about that can actually be a vehicle for, passive income or other types of income that doesn't involve you actually just sitting there using your hands and, torturing your back all day long. So, I mean, I think that you have to understand that there are other risks to take into account other than, maybe I'm financing this huge practice or maybe I won't like managing a team. Like there's always risk no matter what choice you're making. It's just whether or not you can really appreciate that. I think that, with your strategy, not just of going into a group practice that doesn't necessarily need you that you could step away from, but also building other revenue streams and building wealth elsewhere, you are really minimizing that risk by sort of investing in different baskets that you could fall back on if one of those things, wasn't working out so well or, some sort of pandemic happened or the real estate world crash or what have you. So I think that's a really brilliant philosophy. Seriously.
Yeah. And I think too, like a lot of people would hear that news, bad news about their back and kind of freak out. They'd be like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? Like dentistry is my life. Whereas like for you, even before it was an issue, you already had kind of a plan like, hey, if this doesn't work out, like I'll be fine. And I think that's something that a lot of people can learn from. Just like, obviously you can focus on dentistry, but you don't have to put all your eggs in one basket to so say.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I think that's part of my personality too, is I have really lofty goals. And I assume other people that are listening to this also have pretty lofty goals.
Yeah.
And I love progressing and shooting for the next thing. And, I think dentistry provides an amazing lifestyle. I mean, if you really think about it,
Sure.
like, I think we have the best of all worlds. Everyone can complain about insurance and reimbursements going down and, corporate coming in and everything like that. And I used to really listen to that mantra on Facebook, and it used to really get to me. But now I look at it as, like back to the scarcity versus abundance thing that, I mean, dentists really do live a great lifestyle if they play their cards right. You get to help change lives and make people feel better about themselves, take them out of pain. You can control your lifestyle, you can control your destiny, and you make a really high income at the same time. I mean, it's got the trifecta.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. Like, there's a lot of doom and gloom out there, and it's not like it's all made up. Like, I understand there's market forces that maybe aren't super favorable, but at the end of the day, I mean, you got to think about all the people that would just like bend over backwards to be in our position, to have the sort of opportunities we have, and be thankful for that. Like, you just have so many options and choices. I mean, it's just insane. Like, just all the different ways that you can live a fulfilling life. With dentistry being your vehicle. I mean, I just don't understand why people, get so caught up in the negativity and the cynicism of that. You could probably have a whole episode on it, but we don't really need to go into it. And also another thing I wanted to mention is you mentioned, doing the dental days for veterans. What you're searching for, like what you're doing, enables you to do that kind of thing and not really have to sacrifice a whole lot, right? Like, that's just something that's going to make you feel good. You're not really eating a whole lot of cost, or at least in the big context of things, it's not really hurting you. And one like peeve I get is sometimes when people are really sort of obsessed with the business side of things, it's almost assumed that somehow you're like uh sacrificing some morals or concern for your like duties as a doctor and the oath that you take and stuff like that. And I think it's quite the contrary. I think that just in the way it gives you more choices of what you want to do with your life, it gives you more choices of how you do dentistry for people. And you're not so dependent on getting every single penny out of the patients that you're treating. So like if you want to give away, a full arch, do full arch Fridays or something like that, you can do that. And it doesn't kill you. Like, I mean, you're going to eat just fine the same day. So I think that's a brilliant point. I'm really glad you brought it up.
Yeah. To go off that a little bit, I think that you need to treat people right first, and then the money will come. It's not money first, then treat people right. It's, treat patients how you would want to treat your mother, or treat, other people in your family. And I promise you, it will come.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think that's a good note to end on, actually. Because, and I only say that because, it's easy to develop sort of toxic mentalities, when you try to get into this idea of like always trying to build wealth and maximize your income and yada, yada, yada. Like you can weasel your way into a scarcity mentality pretty easily and convince that you're doing everything you can to advance your goals. But I think that you're doing a really good job of sort of balancing, what you want your life to be, and you're living with your principles, and you're having your career embody that and not in reverse. So I just really commend you on all that, Brandon. And just thank you so much for being on. Thank you for being in on the webinar. Thank you for telling us your story. And thank you so much for just embodying what we're all about here at SP, and just kind of reminding people, what we're really doing here. It's not just building practices, we're building better lives.
Oh yeah, great. Thank you for having me on once again. Do you care if I end on one last note?
Please do. Take it away, Brandon.
I basically, for any students out there that, are thinking about, buying a practice, getting into ownership, I just want you to know that like you can do it. And the things that I'm doing aren't anything special. It may seem like it, but really I'm taking action and I'm doing what I need to do, because I think that a lot of times dentists sometimes get in this complacency where you're 2 years out, you're making 250 grand a year, you have a great associateship, you're working 4 days a week, you're making more than all of your other friends, and you just tend to get complacent at where you are, but your dreams have always been to purchase a practice, and it just seems like this big leap. I think it's better to do it early on in your life. Like, I mean, if I graduate, purchase a practice, and it totally fails and everything fails, I'm going to get up and I'm going to do it again. And the other thing is, what do I have to lose? I mean, I don't, some people aren't in the same situation, but I don't have kids. I don't have a family that, I need to worry about. But I think earlier the better, if you're willing to do that. And it all comes down to mindset, and, anyone can do it if you really put in the work and, you're listening to stuff like this.
I love it, man. Absolutely. Peyton, you got anything?
A true influence, a true role model. That's all I got to say.
I couldn't agree more. Well, once again, Brandon, thank you so much. I'm pretty certain this won't be the last time you're on the show. I know we're going to be talking about how, rapidly successful you've been, and we're going to be trying to reverse engineer all the amazing things that you do in the future. So again, thank you so much. And I know the audience is absolutely going to love this episode.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thanks, bud.